Labas rytas, Vilnius. Aš esu guminis ančiukas. Yeah? No? That's not how you say hello, how are you? That's what Vaidotas told me. No? Okay, all right, let's move on. Hi, I'm really glad to be here, first and foremost. I've been here since yesterday, and Vaida has been showing me around, and it's really beautiful. I really love the feel of this town, and thank you all for coming down here this morning. So, I got here yesterday, and last night, in the hotel, I met a new friend. And this was the new friend that I met over here. Does anyone know what that is? Anyone know what that is? Yeah. By the way, I've lost my slides. The main slide is gone, just so you know, on my viewer. So this guy is basically the inside of an elevator in my hotel. And the interesting thing is, elevators have been around for a while now, right? And they usually, the buttons on an elevator layout look something like this, right? They usually go from the lowest floors to the highest floors, and they look like buttons. Thank you, I got my slide back. They look like buttons. And there's a reason for that. If something looks like a button, then you probably think it's a button and you press it, right? And that's kind of the theory behind why buttons look like buttons. So to come back to my Cylon friend here in my elevator in my hotel, these don't look like buttons. They've lost something in, it's very clever, right? It's a new take on the elevator, but they've lost something. For one thing, they've lost an affordance, the physicality of having the order of the buttons correspond to the order of the floors. But also, if you look at how smooth the surface is, it's beautiful. It's like glass, right? And what does that remind me of? Or what does that remind you of? For me, my iPhone, right? My iPhone screen is very beautiful. It's glass. And what do I do with my iPhone? I tap it, right? Very gently, because I love my iPhone. I love it. And so when I saw this, I was like, oh, cool. I know how this works, right? This is how it works. I just tap it. But no, nothing happened. So I was like, OK, I don't know how to use this lift. And then I realized you have to really press it, right? Like a button. But it doesn't look like a button. And then, of course, I got up to my room, and then I had to come down, right? And so this is me trying to come down. Error! This is the first time in my life that an elevator has said error to me. I mean, wow. We took a design that inherently doesn't have any error states, and we put an error state into it. That, to me, is just amazing. And the funniest part was, this was Schindler's Lift. Very cool. We call elevators lifts in the UK, if you've seen the movie. But what was lost, basically, when going from this to this new design? And if you saw in the bottom there, there's actually like a minus sign and a dot. I don't know what those are for. I want to go from floor 3 to floor 5, please. And do you accept regular expressions in there? I don't know. Wow, some geeks in the room. Who laughed at the regular expression joke? Yeah, OK, you're geeky. So we lost something when going from these buttons, these beautiful pressable buttons that tell you something about where you are in the building, to that. So basically what I'm trying to say is, you know, even with something as simple as the design of an elevator control panel, it's very possible to cock it up. That's the first time I've used the cock and balls in a presentation ever. So, and you know what? That's not the worst bit. You know, someone didn't think about that. The worst bit is that that is not the ground floor. That's the alarm button at the bottom. So you can just imagine what's going to happen there. And believe it or not, all of this is related to what I want to talk to you about today, which is the art of emotional design. Or, in other words, making the new everyday things which I hope you'll see in the next 40 minutes or so, is what we are doing, each one of us in the room. We're making the new everyday things. So to start off with, here's some kittens. So to get any other bad thoughts you have in your head away, cocks and balls and stuff, no, kittens, cute kittens, okay? And this is me. I'm at Aral. Who's on Twitter here? Who's on Twitter? Okay, so for the other 1,999 of you, please join Twitter and follow me. That'll be great, because I'll have 2,000 more followers, and I don't bite. And I'm an interaction designer. I'm also a developer, but today I want to talk to you about the design side of things. And what does it mean to be an interaction designer? What does interaction entail? Well, there are elements of other disciplines involved, right? Graphic design, form, color, composition, repetition, typography. That is the aesthetics of static design. That is part of what we do. Motion design, animation, expectation, etc. A linear motion, that is part of what we do. But the key part of what we do is the interaction. And interaction is not easy. What we do as interaction designers is not an easy task. Why? To understand why interaction is not easy, think about, as a human being, how many times when you're talking to another human being have you misunderstood each other? You're in the same room. You're talking to each other. You can see each other. You have all these visual cues. You're both human. You have all these visual cues. You have all these oral cues. You can hear me. You can hear my tone of voice. And still, if we're having a conversation in the same room, how many times have you misunderstood someone? Or have you thought, does he like me? Is he being sarcastic? Is he being straight with me? And we're humans. We've been humans all our lives. We've communicated all our lives. And even today, that's difficult. Now let's take it one step further. What if we remove some of those cues? So for example, when you're on the phone with someone, how much easier is it to misunderstand someone when you're on the phone? What's happened? We've removed all of these visual cues. Suddenly, you cannot see me anymore. You can't see my stance. You can't see my smile, right? You have to infer it from just hearing about me. And so it's much easier to misunderstand me. Let's remove more. What happens when you're on email or if you're texting someone? Suddenly, we've removed the visual cues, but we've also removed the oral cues. You cannot hear me anymore either. So what do? Well, for one thing, it leads to more misunderstandings. Who's seen email flame wars on mailing lists and stuff, right? Or even in your company, you know, one person emails another person, and then they get it wrong, and they think they hate them, so then they CC 50 other people in, and suddenly it's this huge thing, and it explodes over email, right? And what do we do to try and fix this? Because we're losing visual cues, we're losing oral cues, we're losing a bit of our humanity in this communication. We try to inject that humanity back in, right? With what? Emoticons, little smiley faces. What I just said, it's funny, don't hate me, right? We're trying to inject some of that humanity in. So to understand how difficult interaction design really is, remove one of the people from the equation altogether and try to make a thing that communicates, that talks to a human being. That is why interaction design is so difficult. We're losing visual cues, we're losing oral cues, we're losing our humanity a little bit in that communication, and we need to somehow inject that back into the equation. So, in our industry, we still misunderstand our purpose, what it is that we do as designers in our industry. It has nothing to do with being able to draw a straight line or pixel pushing or making things pretty. Okay, maybe it has a little bit to do with it, right? There is the aesthetic usability theory. Things that are more aesthetic, people deem to be more usable until they find out otherwise, of course. And they're willing to give it more of a chance. But it's not the only thing that we do. This is not interaction design. Interaction design is so much more about psychology, neurology, linguistics, sociology, philosophy. In other words, what we do is we try to understand human beings so that we can design for human beings. That is what we do. And that is the art of user experience. And it's very important today. We're all talking about user experience, right? I'm up here in front of 2,000 of you talking to you about user experience. Why today? And why not maybe 20 years ago or 30 years ago? Were we not talking about user experience with such passion in our industry? Well, things were not always the same. Back when computers filled up entire rooms and had all sorts of buttons and you had to feed them tape, things were a little different. Computers did a very important thing. They made the impossible possible. The only alternative to not using a computer this size that maybe you had to beg, borrow, or steal time on was not doing what you were going to do. There was no other alternative. Computers did something very special. And it didn't matter if it was hard to use. What was your alternative? None. This I call the age of features. Every new feature that came out 30, 40 years ago enabled something new that was, before that time, impossible to happen. But times have changed. The cost of computing, both hardware and software, has plummeted. This is not a scientific graph, by the way. This is just me playing in Keynote, just to prove a point. And at the same time, our processing capacity, our memory capacities, our storage capacities have skyrocketed. What we're living in today, as opposed to 30 years ago, or 20 years ago, or even maybe 15 or 10 years ago, is a commoditized industry. What's a commodity? A commodity is any product for which there's a set price, right? Coffee is coffee is coffee. You buy it by the kilogram. You don't examine the beans, right? But there's a certain type of coffee that people are willing to pay extra for. A ridiculous amount extra for sometimes. Why? Other examples of commodities. Cell phones today are commodities, right? I don't know how it is here, but I live in the UK, and most cell phones, they come for free with your contract, right? They're a commodity, basically. But we're willing to pay extra for a certain type of cell phone. Why? And how did the same company do the same thing with the MP3 player? I mean, what's an MP3 player in terms of hardware and software costs, right? It's nothing. You can buy competing ones for, 10, 20 euros. Why does this one cost over 100? How did the same company do the same thing with the personal computer and then with the tablet computer? I don't know about you guys, but I think they're onto something. But what makes them so different from the other guy? Why are they so different? The difference is, the differentiating factor is user experience. So, if nothing else, remember this. When infrastructure is commoditized, and our infrastructure in our industry today is commoditized, the differentiating factor, the value, that which you cannot commoditize, the competitive advantage is user experience. So great, we know what to do. All we need to do is create great user experiences and then profit, right? What's a great user experience? That's harder to define. What's really easy to define, however, is what a bad user experience is. And I can define it by how it makes me feel, and see if you agree. This is how it makes me feel when I have a bad user experience. Who gets emotional when they have some sort of a bad user experience? Come on, it's okay. You can tell me. Yeah? Yeah? Some of you, everyone else is like, I don't know, I just kind of use it and it's fine. If it doesn't work, I just restart. I don't know why it's a German accent suddenly, but but yeah, I get angry at things, and it's okay to get angry. Getting angry means you care about something. It's what you do with that anger afterwards that's also important. If you can channel that into passion, into changing something, then that's what we do as designers. I once had someone say, why are you angry? And I thought about it, and I thought, I'm angry because I care. I'm a designer because I'm unhappy with the way things are so that I can change them. That is why I do what I do. So we know that a bad user experience can drive you crazy, right? Gaga, angry, frustrate you. So at the very least, let's make things that don't drive people crazy. Is that a good baseline to agree on? Yeah? We can go from there. And it's quite easy to do this. We know how to do this. We've studied human-computer interaction for 20, 40 years, and we know how to do this. And it all comes down to one major thing, and that is worrying about the right thing. And the right thing to worry about is your users' needs, not your needs. What do I mean by that? You're starting a new project, right? And you're in the planning stage. Let's say it's a website. If the first thing that comes into your head is, what is my database schema going to look like? You're worrying about the wrong thing. You're worrying about your problems, not the user's problems. And the thing is, truthfully, if you worry about your user's problems first, it's going to create more problems for you. This is what we call outside-in design versus inside-out. Outside is where the user is, and we worry about their problems, and we come down. And it creates more problems for you then. But that's okay, because our problems don't matter. At the end of the day, it's the user's problems and solving those that matter in what we do. And it requires focus. It requires focus on user experience. I was recently consulting with a large company, and I think it was in Stockholm. I'm not sure, I mixed these places up now. I just travel a lot. And they said, we're really into user experience. You know, we want you to talk to us about user experience. It's our annual meeting of our company. And they had the opening keynote, and they had a slide showing what they were going to talk about. And this was the slide. It says, top priorities. And I don't know if you can see it, but we were number 5. And in information architecture and in design, you know, layering and the order and the hierarchy of information is very important. It's very telling. We should have been actually up here, right, if it was that important to that organization. But the place that we were at is more normal for most companies. And actually, this is where we should have been. Because user experience is a cross-cutting concern. It should be a cross-cutting concern. It affects everything. It is not just a design function. It affects the organization of your company from the top down. And it's not something that trickles up very easily. It really has to come from the top down. And it requires focus then, not by just the one person you hire as a consultant, but it requires focus from everyone in your organization on a very, very, very important thing. And that thing is on delivering quality over quantity. Quality is about user experience. Quantity is about features. And a lot of us have our heads stuck in the quantity. What do I mean by that? How many platforms will we run on? Who cares? Are you going to run well on those platforms? How many people in the mobile field have their whole businesses just completely tied to running on as many platforms as possible? Adobe, sorry. You know, Air on mobile, really? Come on. How about running well on a small amount of devices instead? The quote that I love about this is from Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, the author of The Little Prince. And he says, perfection is achieved not when there is nothing more to add, but when there's nothing left to take away. So when you're designing, when you're making things, keep that in your little finger, in the background, always. It's a beautiful quote. And here's an example from a real-world case study. iDVD, it comes with Macs, you can burn DVDs. I'm sure we're going to forget what DVDs are very soon. But in the meanwhile, Apple acquired this company to build them iDVD. And Mike Evangelist, their head, tells in Fast Company magazine how they were going to have their first meeting with Steve Jobs. So they prepared really hard. They created wireframes. They created documentation showing every screen of how iDVD would work. And they came to the meeting, and they had all their plans there. And he says, Steve Jobs walked into the room, and he ignored everything that they had. And he walked to a blackboard, and he drew a box. And he said, this is the window. And then inside the box, he drew a button called Burn. And he said, you drag your video into the window, and you press the burn button, and you get a DVD. And that is iDVD. That is focus. And what that says to me is that there is no but in user experience. What do I mean by that? How many times have you been in a meeting where you presented an idea that's very simple? You've distilled it down to its core, to what the user is trying to achieve. You've done it in a beautiful way, aesthetically lovely. And then someone on the other side of the table says, that's beautiful, that's lovely, but. That's the point where things start going wrong. But our partners, what about our partner companies? But what about the marketing concerns? What about this or that? As you start moving away from the user's needs, that's where you're going to start losing out on user experience. And why is this important? It's not important if you're the only person on that platform. It's important when you have competitors. It's important when you have competitors who are focusing on user experience. This is why Apple currently is running around companies like Nokia and smartphones, right? They're just doing circles around them. They're just kind of, hi Nokia, how you doing? I'll be back. One more round? Yeah, how are you guys? You still here? Great. Why? One of them says, oh yes, we have all these operating systems and we just got Windows 7 as well. It's great, let's have it on all these phones. We have 30 million different devices. It's so cool, you have so much choice. Android, right? Choice. Oh, scary. Whereas Apple's going, here's a beautiful device. This one device, it's so beautiful. Don't you want to touch it? Come here, touch it, it's okay. And Nokia's going, look at all of these. None of them really work well, but look, so many. How can they compete? How? And design is not democratic, right? That's a camel, a horse designed by committee. It's not democratic. It's like directing a theater play, right? You need a director. You need someone with a vision who listens to people, who tell him the things that he needs or she needs to hear. But it's not democratic. So, we know that if we worry about the right thing, we can build apps that don't drive people crazy. And in our field, we call this level usable, right? And a lot of apps, a lot of devices never reach this level, usable. What if we do? Well, usable is a good place to be, but usable is kind of like saying edible for food, right? When was the last time you were sitting with your partner, for example, and you said, well, darling, hi, I really feel like going out tonight. Why don't we go for some edible food? I really don't feel like getting poisoned tonight. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. That's right. No, right? What do we say? We say, let's go somewhere special. Special. Let's go somewhere nice, right? Depending on your vocabulary, I guess. But what you want is an experience. You don't want to not get poisoned. Usable is at that level. You're not poisoning people. But can we go beyond that? I think we can. If you take Maslow's hierarchy of needs, us in the design field really love Maslow, we can apply this to design. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs posits that there are base needs that must be met before humans even think that higher level needs are important or start concentrating on them. If you're starving, you're not going to want to go to see Shakespeare. You're not going to be really sad if you don't, right? You're going to be sad if you don't find some bread and some water. But once you do, your next thing is, you're sipping your water, you're eating bread. Shakespeare would be nice. Yeah? All right. Can we apply this to what we do? Yes. Unless an app, a product, a thing is functional, reliable, and usable, we can't even begin to think about going beyond that, to layering other things like delight and beauty. So while edible is good, we can go beyond edible to pleasurable. And while edible is good, we can go beyond edible to creating things that are beautiful. We can go beyond edible to creating things that are delightful. Delight, pleasure. These are not words that we use as often as we should in our everyday lives, are they, in what we do? And yet, that's what we're in the business of doing, making things that hopefully delight and give pleasure and are fun for people to use. And we can go even beyond this, to use a word that Apple has ruined for me, unfortunately, with their latest advertising, to create things that are magical. And I don't use magical lightly. I don't use it as a marketing term. Why are you sitting here today? Why did you get up early in the morning, probably, and come out here, maybe take time out of work to listen to talks about something you're interested in, or I hope you're very interested in. I hope that you're passionate about. Why am I here talking to you today? Why? Because about maybe many years ago now, when I was about 7, my dad brought home a computer, an IBM XT. It was like a big tin thing. It had a joystick which was rectangular. It's amazing. And he put it in front of me, and he said the one thing that probably has led to me being here. He said, play with it. You can't break it. And he gave me a basic manual. And I remember the first thing I did was write 10, print hello, 20, go to 10, run. And the computer just said, hello, 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 hello. And there I was going, this is so cool. I made it do this. And then I was like, how do I stop it? But it was amazing. I was 7 years old, and I could do this. And then I could draw stars, and I could create a galaxy. And let me tell you, if you can create a galaxy when you're 7 years old, that's quite magical. Don't forget, whatever it is for you, this feeling. Don't forget that. Hold on to that feeling. And if you don't feel it when you wake up in the morning to do whatever it is you're going to do, then look to changing that. It may not come from one day to the other, but at least steer your path so that you are, because life's too short to forget that magic. So what I want to talk to you about today really is the art of user experience. But the question is user experience design an art? Can we call it an art? Well, we know that our field is very young. And technologies, platforms that are young, are usually misunderstood. This is an actual sign from when the light bulb first came out. It says, do not attempt to light it with a match, right? There's a switch you can use. Or, more in keeping with what we're talking about, when the Lumiere brothers first showed their motion picture in public, one of the first motion pictures of a train coming into a station, the myth goes, the rumor, is that people were so scared that there was a real train coming towards them that they fled out of the cinema. I don't know if this is true. This might just have been the Lumiere brothers doing some very good marketing for how realistic their film is. But one thing is true. In the 150 to 100 years that we've had photography, when it first came out, we thought it was purely objective. We thought photography and video and film, actually, were purely objective. That you would put a camera somewhere and you would capture reality. That it was purely technical. You guys see some parallels to how we see some of what we do? Purely technical. 150 years since, or 100 years, depending on which you're talking about. And we have learned that it's anything but objective. That it's actually entirely subjective. where you place the camera, what you choose to include in the shot, what you don't include in the shot. All of these things are so important. And all of these things begin to give it an air of authorship. In terms of film noir, what we call the auteur theory. So if I say to you, Woody Allen, then you know the types of films I'm talking about, right? He has a signature. He's an auteur. If I say to you in product design, Johnny Ive, does he have a signature? Can you have some idea of the types of things Johnny Ive creates? What about in apps? What about in software? What about in mobile stuff? Who are the auteurs? Well, I'm pretty sure I'm staring at some of you in the face, whether you know it or not, in this very room. It could be you. So, the art of user experience. Let's call it an art. User experience. 2 words, user and experience. Are they even necessary? Both words? Think about it. Think about from when you wake up in the morning, first thing, to when you go to sleep at night, how many scripted, crafted experiences do you have? How many conversations with things do you have? So here's an example from a recent trip I took. It started with me trying to get my ticket from the Eurostar. I was going to Belgium. And this was the machine that I saw. So, of course, initially when you approach a machine, it's just like approaching a human. It says hello in a certain way, right? So how did this machine say hello to me? It said, do you see that arrow up there, that big yellow arrow? It said, hi, put your card in here. And so I said, okay. I took my card out, put it in there. I was waiting. Nothing happened, right? And then I thought, okay, that's not what it was saying to me. I misunderstood. So I looked around and I saw at the very bottom, I don't know even if you can see it, it says, touch the screen to start. So the little text says, touch the screen to start. But the big arrow says, put your card in here. Come on, you can do it. So it was fucking with me, basically, right? It told me one thing, and then I had to do another. Okay, so I got on the train. I managed to go through this. I got on the train, and I saw this door. Look at how this door works. It's really cool. You have this handle, and then you just flick it, and the door opens. And that's not how doors normally work, right? So I learned something new. And then I came to the toilet. That's where I was going. And I saw the same type of handle. And I thought, I'll flick it. And nothing happened. I tried to flick it again, and nothing happened. And then I realized that I have to actually open the door all the way myself. So what happened there? It taught me something. It taught me something new, a new way of doing things. That was really cool. I loved it. Whoa, hey, all right, awesome. Yeah, I'll be back. And then 2 seconds later, it just crashed and burned all of my expectations that it had just created. Think about how many times software does this as well, right? And you know when I approached the second door? Yeah, maybe I was being naive. But that is how we should approach things. Sometimes as designers and developers, we get too intelligent. Me, I like to walk up to things like I have no clue, right? I just go, hi, how are you? I know nothing about you. Tell me about yourself, right? And then we start a conversation. And we need to really hold on to that naivety. It's important as designers. So I arrived at the station, and I was coming down the escalator, and this is what I saw. Signs in Belgium are amazing, by the way. They really are amazing. This was the sign. And I'm coming down straight down the escalator, and I'm thinking, okay, so this sign has a natural affordance, right? Its physicality implies its use in some way. Because I'm coming down straight, and it has 2 sides. So, does it mean that everything on one side is to the left and the others are on the right, based on its natural affordance, its halfway point? Or does it look like this? Or is that arrow strong enough to include everything that comes after it? So of course, I went the wrong direction. It was like this. But this is the affordance that it gives the sign. It's very lopsided. But that's what they meant, so I went there. But like I said, signs in Belgium, amazing, amazing. I haven't yet seen a staircase that you can't go both up and down. But if you need that additional bit of encouragement, if you're there going, will I be able to come back down? Yeah, okay, all right, I'll go up now. That's good, okay. So I was coming back to my hotel, and I saw this vending machine. And I thought, hey, I'm in Belgium. I want to have something Belgian, typically Belgian, to drink, right? So I looked at the list of drinks, and it said espresso, coffee. Okay, great. So coffee with sugar, that's great. And I thought, now, I should have 10. The most important part of this is, I thought at the very top, right? The most important drinks, the local drinks, will be at the very top of this. So I thought, you know what? I want to try something local. Let me have a Dosering Suiker. That sounds like a really good drink. So I pressed it, and I waited, and I pressed it again, and then I kind of understood that that meant more sugar or additional sugar. But why was I confused? Because everything else was a drink, and it looked like a drink. Consistency. On my way back, I flew, and I saw this. I mean, I didn't really actually fly. It was a plane. I saw this machine, and there was a guy in front of it, and he was looking at it like he didn't understand what to do. He wasn't sure what to do. So I talked to him, and this was the reason. These were the instructions. Use correct change when indicated, or overpayment can be made. However incorrect, or no change will be given. Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I got to my hotel. This is what greeted me. Welcome, dear Balkan mister. How do you today? The idea behind it was great, but the execution, no. It could have said, dear, insert name here, right? And then, of course, my favorite. Who's seen this in like hotels? Do you see that little plug? Do you see that? So you close it, it's fine, right? It's fine. And then you fill it up with water. That's really great. It's all working. It's doing what it's supposed to do. And then what happens when you want to unplug it? What do you have to do? You have to stick your hand in the water. Somebody thought of this, or didn't, and they said, yeah, sure, it'll work. It works. It does its function, right? No. Common sense is a myth. A lot of the design mistakes we make is because we believe that as humans, we have common sense and that we don't have to focus on what we're doing, and when we really do have to focus. So user experience, I don't even think the user part is important anymore. From the moment you wake up in the morning to the moment you go to bed at night, we are bombarded with user experiences. So much so that they just basically become experiences, right? And I call what I do experience design. Because if I'm having a number of bad user experiences in a day, I'm having a bad day. And that is what we do. We make things that decide whether someone has a good day or a bad day. It's not just about the UI either. We're talking about and living in a world of mobile devices. And these things are not always used at a desk where you might be designing or developing it. The context is king when it comes to mobile experiences. Where it's being used can fundamentally alter how it's being used, the ergonomics of it, context. So we have to begin to learn to think outside the screen. And it's not about having this artificial separation of software and hardware that seems, so useful when you're hiring people and building teams and trying to get economies of scale and all these things. No, that leads to stuff like this error from my Samsung phone that they gave me, which I've now gotten rid of. It says, no SIM card or phone is turned off. Really? Really? But this happens when you separate, when you have this artificial separation between software and hardware. Oh, I don't care about the hardware, I'm doing the software. How can you not? It is about software and hardware together working seamlessly. How can we not see this still? It's about the experience. What I'm trying to say is the age of features is dead. Welcome to the age of user experience. So the art of user experience, it's about the little things. What kind of little things? Here's my first app that I made. It's for the iPhone. You use it to scan a book after you've unlocked your home page, apparently your home screen. You scan the barcode of a book. It tries to find it on the internet. And if it can, on this service called Safari Books Online, you can start reading it right away. And so it scans it, it's looking for it, and it says, we'll find it, and yeah, they have it, read it now, great. When I show people this, they usually go, well, how did you do that? How did you do the barcode scanning? How did you do this bit? How did you do that bit? And really, the questions that I'm most interested in are not the hows, but the whys. Why did you build it the way that you built it? That's a much more interesting question for me. And for example, why do I use all these little emoticons, these little emoji blobs? They're called delighters. They're known as delighters. Remember that word? Delight. Delight's a beautiful thing. Here's an example from one of my friends. This is the holding page for a site called Silverback for doing guerrilla usability testing. Look at what happens when you resize the browser. Who resizes their browser every time they use a site here? There's always one. Yeah, there you are. Thank you, sir. Okay. Most people don't, right? So they knew that. They didn't build a flash intro with lots of balls and techno music saying, in the next 5 minutes, we'll tell you what the site is about. Boom, 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 boom. No, right? Instead, they layered a little bit of delight on top of what the page does, which says, hey, it's coming soon, blah, blah, blah. And they knew, though, that there would be that person in the audience, one person who would go, ooh, ah. And they knew that that person would then go on Twitter and go, oh my fucking God, it's parallax scrolling in HTML and CSS, pink ponies. And then all of their friends would go, ooh, ah. And it would spread. And that's exactly what happened. And it doesn't even have to be technological. The best example of a delighter is an email that I've seen. It's from Little Moo. When you buy these Moo cards, when you order Moo cards, these half-size cards, and you get this email when you put your order in. It's not from do not reply at Microsoft.com. No, it's from Little Moo. And it says, I am Little Moo, the bit of software that will be managing your order with us. I will shortly be sent to Big Moo. And you're like, hi, Little Moo. I'm so happy you have a friend. And suddenly, it's not just a piece of email. You have Little Moo and Big Moo that you're thinking about. So don't ask when you're creating things, does it get the job done? Do not reply at Microsoft.com. Works, right? Works. Say, does it give me joy to use? Use words like empathy. This is what we do. We try to empathize and build things that talk to humans, right? So what happens in my app when things go wrong? When things go right is great. It's trying to find it, but the internet is slow. It says, in just a few seconds, all will be revealed. But it's not, because the internet connection is slow. And then it says, it's taking a little longer. Okay, it's adapting. And it's still not loading. So it goes, ooh, okay, yeah, I'm trying. I'm still trying. It's not my fault, but this is not making me look good. And then what happens? It starts crying. Like, please load. But at this point, the user is probably normally would be getting frustrated, right? But instead, there's this poor blob crying his eyes out. And then he says, oh, sorry, I couldn't load it, right? So what's the normal, naive version of this? It would be an indeterminate progress bar, right? What is the indeterminate progress bar? It just goes round and round. What does that say to you? It says the first thing that the blob said. Yeah, I'm getting it for you right away. Yeah, got it. Okay, yeah. And then slow. So it keeps doing the same thing, though. So about 3 minutes later, it's still going, I got it for you. Yeah, it's just there. And you're going, you're dumb. You're really dumb, right? It's not adapting to the world around it as it's changing. I don't mean, build Clippy into your applications, okay? It doesn't have to be a cute anthropomorphic character. It doesn't have to be that. But it is about the little things. So in my latest app, for example, Feathers, the simplest things. So in Feathers, it's an app for decorating tweets. So think of like if you're not on Twitter, Facebook status updates. You can add emoticons and fancy letter styles and things to it. In that, I was forced to make a very difficult decision at the very beginning. At the very, very beginning, in the login screen. So this is what the login screen looks like. And you might think, OK, that's fine. And then when you log in, you go directly into the app, and then you can start to write your first tweet. But when I was building this, Twitter wanted me to do it a different way. They wanted me to do it like this. Welcome to my app. Tap here to launch the Twitter website to authenticate. And to me, this is how it reads. Welcome to my app. Now please go away. OK? It's probably the rudest thing you can say to someone when they've just come to your door. And where were they going to? They were going here. After I'd slaved over every pixel in my beautiful user interface, they were going to go there? Really? Yeah, that was going to be the weakest link. So remember, this was the experience they wanted. And I said, no, I'm going to build it with a login. And they said, if you do that, then we're not going to show on the tweets that it's your app that's doing it. So I was going to lose out on organic marketing for it because no one would know that my app was making these tweets. And I said, OK. That's not as important to me as the user experience. So next week, when Stephen Fry tweeted, "My life is going round in circles," using Feathers, exactly 1,365,217 people didn't see that he used my app to do it. But what they did do is they started talking about it. And they said, wow, what did you do this with? What app did you use? And it's OK to have fun with these things that we're building. You know, when we're writing a tweet, for example, the little bird fills up. I don't need to know that I have 120 characters left. I don't know how to write for 120 characters left. But when it gets to the point where I care, it changes. It tells me, OK, now you have 5, so I can change it. Or when I'm tweeting with it, for example, the little bird flaps its wings. It's just a little thing. It's superfluous, right? It's not even that important, but it does it. Or it doesn't even have to be a little detail. The keyboard, the custom keyboard, why does it behave exactly like the built-in keyboard? Not almost, not good enough, but exactly. That exactly meant that I had to work 2 more weeks on it to get it just right. And does it work? Does it pay off? Yes. Attention to user experience does pay off. So these are some of the reviews. Look at the words they're using. Joyful, fun, adorable, fell in love with. It's a little app. Somebody fell in love with it. How cool is that? OK. And some of the other responses, like, I really love the singing bird when you send a tweet. People notice these things. Or, I love the appeal to human emotion. They're talking about an app, remember. Or, sometimes I just make tweets that are too long just to see the bird go red. How cool is that? That's not what it's for. But they're playing with it. They are playing with it. And this is my best. I can't believe you took something as serious as Twitter and did something like this. Yeah, why not? It's fun. And people notice. So it was in Inspired magazine, for example, as a beautifully designed iPhone utility. I got it. I got 5 minutes. Thank you. And it was featured as new and noteworthy by Apple, for example. So these things do pay off. And you can find out more about it here. So to leave you with an example of how little things make big differences and focus on user experience. How do you buy a ticket to the airport? 2 different ways, right? If you're in Stockholm, this is the machine you see. Oh my goodness. Wow. OK. So look at it. You look at it because you can't take it all in. And it's got all these instructions. That's a great sign that there's something wrong. If you have a lot of documentation, if you need to tell people how to use it, it's a great sign that it's not easy to use, right? So all of these instructions telling you how to navigate. Oh my gosh, they wrote a novel. They wrote a book about it, on it. It's great. All the different ways that you can pay are on there. And it even has some that are not accepted on board. Why do I care? I don't, right? It's got this screen in addition to everything else. And then it's even got a help button, so you can talk to a human being. That's how complex this thing is, that there's some poor sod on the other end going, yes, hello, my life is very boring. Will you talk to me? It's horrible. This is what it looks like. And I'm sure they think this is the only way they could do it. How does it look in Oslo? It looks like this. This is how you buy a ticket. How do you use it? Like this. You swipe your credit card, right? You swipe your credit card, you go on board, and then if you want a receipt, you can get it later. This is how it looks when it's being used. That man didn't even stop. He just went like this. He just went, whew, and then walked. And then he went to the gate, and when he was coming out, he just had to swipe his card again. And then he was out of there. How cool is this? That's the kind of thing. That's the beauty of user experience. No UI, right? But it makes you feel like Superman. That's what you wanted to be when you were a kid. That's a superpower. This is how I get on a train. Yeah. I just want to do it again. It's amazing. No. This is what a difference on focus makes. So to leave you, one last thing. One danger, user experience, when you're designing. Beware of the weakest link. The experience is only as good as the weakest link. And the weakest link will be the part that's not under your control. So don't reinvent the wheel, but be careful of third-party libraries and components that you don't have the source code for, that you can't change, that are not in your control. It's all about control. And APIs. APIs were supposed to be the darling of Web 2.0. They are so dangerous because you don't have control. They could turn things off. They did that for Feathers for Facebook, for example. When it was featured on the App Store, they just pulled the plug. Facebook pulled the plug because it didn't like the fact that I was saying for Facebook. It was a trademark thing. But if those first reviews you saw are amazing, these are horrible to get, right? So, in summary, we've come a very long way since the earliest days of computing, when computers did a very important thing. They made the impossible possible, to living in an industry that's entirely commoditized, where the differentiating factor is user experience. And if we don't want to create user experiences that drive people crazy, and it's easy to because it's so difficult to do interaction design because you're creating things that talk to human beings, then we need to focus. Focus on the right thing, your users' needs, not your needs. And remember that design is not democratic. And beware of the weakest link, of losing control. And even though that will get us to usable, we can go beyond usable and edible to explore the art, the artistry of what we do, to create things that are beautiful, to create things that are delightful, to create things that are magical and will hopefully inspire a whole new generation. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Oh, thank you. You're too kind. Thank you. One last thing before I get off this stage. I'm a very big supporter of Creative Commons. If you don't know, you rock too, man. Thank you. If you don't know about it, Google Creative Commons. This presentation would not have been possible without these images that people have shared on Flickr under a Creative Commons license, which meant that I could use them to make this presentation. So as content creators and content consumers, if you're not aware of it, please go out and look into Creative Commons. And these are the credits for those photos for my presentation. Feel free to come up to me afterwards and talk to me, or I am on Twitter as @Aral. Thank you again. Thank you.